All right, well, we are live, the Tech Tip Trio. We're here today again to talk to you about tech, and I have Jesse and Catherine with me. Say hi.
Hi, thanks for having us.
And today we're going to talk about when is your technology too old? Too old for what, right? I mean, how long should you have that computer for before you actually start shopping for a new one? And what about upgrading? Can't that work for you sometimes? And when we talk about computers and technology and being old, are we just saying the computer itself, or are we talking about the stuff related to it as well, like that router and that printer and everything else? So I'm going to get some insight from my tech tip trio here, and they're going to help us answer those questions. So let's start with the first one. Jesse, I'll pick on you first. Let's address the question of when is it that we start noticing whether our computer itself is too old and we should look at getting a brand new one?
Sure. So, I mean, everybody has different expectations from their technology. And of course, my perspective on this is very much coming from how businesses use their computers as opposed to maybe residential users. And one of the things that we've done, the last couple of years is we might look at, say, an engineering company. And in that engineering company, there will be, drafts people who need to, render things in 3 dimensions and do virtual walkthroughs. Well, they have a very different expectation or requirement than the accounts payable and receivable person. And it's not that they don't both depend on computers, but their demands that they put on them are much greater. So in an environment like that, we would likely find that as technology advances, as these 3D renderings get more complex and you can do, virtual walkthroughs and have little people walking around, they're likely going to need to upgrade or replace their computers more frequently because of the, rapidly increasing demands than, the more traditional office administrative users. Because Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel, they don't require the same horsepower, we'll say. And so what we recommend to our clients is you want to have, more of a planned replacement schedule. And it'll be in that scenario. It might be that your engineers, your drafts people are getting new equipment every 3 or 4 years, and your office staff is every 4 to 6 years. And so you kind of look at the demands. The other thing that we look at is, what's the level of risk? So if a laptop dies and it's out of warranty and, it takes a little while to replace it or to get replacement parts, I mean, that's inconvenient for one user. But if the server dies and it's out of warranty, that affects all of your users. So when we talk about replacements of different pieces of equipment in the business, it's going to be different depending on the demands and that level of risk that they have.
So, Catherine, do you want to add to that?
Well, I agree with everything Jesse has to say. And then for me personally, if I can type faster and then I have to wait for my words to appear, then I know it's time to, I don't have a lot of patience when it comes to technology in terms of waiting time. So if you're doing stuff and things are just hanging and just causing you delays, then I say that's a good time to replace your equipment. A lot of time we have clients that want to save money, and so instead of replacing the whole thing, we'll just switch them up to a faster hard drive and SSD drive. And that can get them going for a while, and it'll be a lot faster because the hard drives are so fast and amazing now that if your computer is 3 or 5 years old, it might not have that kind of hard drive. And so it's worth it to spend the money without having to replace the whole thing. And the other thing that I always say to clients is, if you keep having problems with this PC and we keep coming to fix it, it's time to kind of weigh your loss. Like the productivity and all of that need to be factored in. Yes, you can have a computer for 4 to 6 years, but if you're constantly waiting or something's going wrong all the time, then factor that in, because with a lot of people going to the cloud, your requirement for device, or not your requirement, but like Jesse was saying, the risk is not that great to just go swap something else, whereas before it takes a lot of time and all that stuff. So that's kind of my gauge for myself and my advice to clients.
Yeah, I like the idea of planning too, because I know for myself, I have multiple machines, but if I see that I'm like Catherine, if that mouse or that keyboard is slower than me, then that's time to get something new happening. But I don't want to do it necessarily when I'm in my busiest time, because then that means I'm without, and then it's just the inconvenience of having to load everything again and stuff. So I like that planned idea. I've been telling people 3 years is when they should be looking to update their machines, because that's what I use. But thank you for clarifying. And maybe I don't have the best machines to begin with. I don't know. But
it's different for every business. The idea when we go to clients and say you should replace them every 3 years, they think of that capital expense, and they have to just decide, what's the best way to use, the cash at that time. We're finding that more and more businesses are moving to either a leasing model, where they're, just making essentially monthly payments, or we have, quite a few of our clients that use what's technically, it's similar to leasing, but it's called hardware as a service, where, they pay a monthly fee and each of their users gets a device, the corporate antivirus and encryption and, remote management and support and all of the help desk that they need. And then for those businesses, it's really easy, because they just say, okay, every single person who works here, gets a wage, and we also have, a budgeted cost of what it takes to equip them, with the devices that they need. And then, there's a replacement schedule in there where every, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever fits for that business, they just get new devices, and the price, basically stays the same on them.
That makes sense. It's kind of, you already expected in your budget, so you're planning for it that way too. So what would you say, maybe have Catherine to start with this one, what would you say would be all the other pieces of technology that maybe we take for granted and we don't realize, we need to update those as well? And so I'm thinking about like monitors or the printers or stuff like that, the routers, stuff like that. What would you say in terms of age or expectation of those things?
For me, I'm pretty simple. I don't need bunch of fancy monitor. I mean, my consultant used to tease me that I was on a 14-inch monitor for the longest time. And then I went to 2 screen. It was like, whoa. And my keyboard, they're all worn out. Like, you can't see the keys, but I just type by feel, and it drives them crazy when they come in and work on my computer. So I don't switch my stuff very much for myself, because I just don't care. Like, as long as they work, that's good. But we have clients, it's like Jesse was saying, it's just whatever function you do for your company, how important the monitor is. And yeah, like, accountants, they need to see a lot of spreadsheet, and so they have 3 screen happening. But I think the one thing that get neglected, because they go for a long time, is the switch in your office. It runs everyone, and people forget about the switch. But if the switch goes down, boom, you're all dead in the water, right? So I think a good practice would be just every year or every quarter, just think about it's all about the planning, right? But it's hard to tell people to plan when there's no need. But usually then it's because we're like, unlike Jesse, we're an on-demand service. So we like to talk to client about that, but sometimes they don't want to do stuff unless it's kind of come near. Another thing that I think that people don't upgrade very often is their Windows operating system.
Yeah.
You know, they use not Windows 10, they use 7, 98, you know, like really weird old system that, yeah, it works, but you're not protected. So it's kind of like, what function are you doing and how critical your job is, and having a powerful computer. So yeah, it's very flexible, like 3 to 5 years. But for me, the switch is the one that's least kind of taking into consideration.
By switch, are you meaning the switch so that I can run 2 different machines with 1 monitor or keyboard, or what do you mean by switch?
By switch. Oh, it's usually in a corporate environment. The switch is the computer with all the cables that comes out and connect you to the internet and disperse to all the offices. So most home user don't have a switch, but they have a router with multiple plugs that you can plug in if you're not on Wi-Fi. So it's for the people who are not on Wi-Fi that the switch is important. So typically most businesses with a server, that kind of stuff, but that's kind of like a piece of hardware that gets neglected, I find.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see, so anybody that's watching this, if you want to put in the comments, how old do you let your computer get to be before you buy a new one? Do you have a certain time frame in mind, or are you waiting for something to happen, like Catherine's saying, where it's faster than you, or you're faster than it is, then you stop? Or are you waiting for it to blow up completely and then you're like, okay, now's the time to get a new machine? Give us your comments, give us your feedback on what you do, maybe for yourself, for at home, for at work. And then I'm going to circle back to what you said about Windows. So Windows 10 was launched over a year ago. I don't know if it was October okay, sorry, I don't remember the date, but it was launched quite a while ago. And in the launch of Windows 10, I thought the big deal was you must update to this, otherwise your Windows product is not secure. So you're at huge risk if you don't update. So I know I was spreading that message to all my clients. You're still finding people that are not on Windows 10. Is there a risk? I think you just said there was. So maybe can you talk a little bit more about that, so we can understand that a bit?
Well, yeah, because if you're not on Windows 10, then you're on an older, then you're not protected in terms of security patches that happens, because they don't, like, they get end of life with Microsoft. But yeah, some people still have it. And so when you find it, it's always like, and especially when Microsoft was giving it all for free. So now they're kind of inconsistent. Sometimes it's free to upgrade to Windows 10. Sometimes you have to pay. So it's the luck of the draw when you go. Because yeah, otherwise you actually have to pay another $150 for the software, whereas you just have to pay the labor to upgrade. But it's kind of like hit and miss. I think the end of life was 2019 or something for Windows 7. So it's a while back, but we're still, like, until we were still upgrading people that we find that have Windows 7 a few weeks ago, right? So it happens, and I think in the home environment, it might even be more even older software. So I guess if you're using a tablet, it's all security and being conscious, but it's those things where you don't, if your computer just runs, that's also like, it just does its thing, right? You don't think about it. It's a tool and you don't think about it. But usually when computer crashes, usually when it's most inconvenient for you. So the more you plan, the better it is, in my experience.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask this one of Jesse here. I mean, I know, so COVID hits and everybody is going home to use either their own computers. We've already had an episode on that, so make sure, if you haven't seen that episode that we did on a Facebook Live with the same group of people here. We talked about working from home safely. Please go back and read that. But if for some reason your equipment at home is not up to par, then I know I've seen lots of complaints from users about the Zoom not working properly or Microsoft Teams not working, and it's like, is it the product, the software that's not working, or is it your computer, or your computer devices or your internet? So maybe can you talk to that a bit, Jesse, for us, so that we understand what to blame, because people are blaming the software a lot of times. So, and maybe it's not.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I always kind of liken computer problems to like troubleshooting a chain, like a chain that's broken apart, right? Because as soon as you have a problem on a Facebook Live, like what we're doing, I mean, we have a computer that we're using, we have a webcam, we have an internet connection, we have an operating system, we have a browser, and these are all just links in a chain. They all depend on each other. And so you could have, this amazing high-powered workstation at home, and you have the worst internet connection on the planet, you're going to struggle with doing any kind of, video conferencing. And vice versa, you could have an amazing high-end fiber internet connection and a 22-year-old computer, and you're going to struggle with having good video conversations. So this is, the reason I use the chain is because I talk to businesses, again, in particular, about your network's performance, your network's security, your network's stability is only as strong as the weakest link in the chain. So what Catherine was talking about with Windows and the system updates, like when Microsoft released Windows 7, they already had published when they would stop supporting it. So we knew about it well in advance, and we knew that anything after that date meant that you were at risk. And she is right. I mean, there's still, globally, there would still be millions of computers running Windows 7. I mean, the US Department of Defense, like their missile silos and their aircraft carriers run on Windows XP. And they pay millions and millions of dollars to Microsoft. They still get support. They still get patched on Windows XP. Microsoft makes a ton of money, doing that for them. So the thing about troubleshooting a problem that you're having is you need to break it down into those links of the chain, and then start testing them and really isolating it and coming along and saying, okay, your problem is internet. Your problem is, the computer. And when we say internet, I mean, that's internet into the house, that's your Wi-Fi in the house. Like there's multiple components to each link.
Yeah, I think the issue is people introduce a new thing like Microsoft Teams or Zoom or web conferencing, and they blame that because everything worked before, but now it doesn't work. And it's not. And the thing they don't get is this chain is like, well, no, actually your system was kind of old before, but you never did anything sophisticated or new with it. You did email back and forth. You surfed the web probably, and maybe you watched the odd YouTube video, and then maybe did some Word and Excel. Those aren't huge tasks. But when you're asking to do other stuff that people do in the everyday life at work, then there's that strain on that chain. And so yeah, it's interesting because that's where I hear the blame going is to the software. Oh, that's no good because it doesn't work. It's like, well, is it the software? But anyways, yeah. Okay, so good. What else can we add to this? Anything else you want to say about age? We've got a few more minutes. I know Jesse's got another call right away. So I tell people 3 years you should get new technology, but how do you guys want to end up?
I say reboot. When in doubt, reboot your computer. That works a lot of time.
Yeah, and I mean, my recommendation is, again, it's more focused at business users. So, just make a plan and stick to the plan.
Yeah, and make a plan is probably the key thing there, because I think people just take their computers for granted and don't deal with it unless there's a problem. So
it's hard to keep track of. I mean, let's face it. If you're a business and you have 20 or 30 or more people, I mean, you've got to keep track of payroll and benefits and vehicles and tools and and you start going through this list, and I mean, a computer's just a computer. It's the cost of it is relatively small in the big picture of running a business, and they move around, right? And so how do you keep track of these little things and who has them and how old they are? Yeah, it's a challenge for lots of businesses. Again, we have different business models. In our business model, we have software that can report to us how old things are, right? Which is really handy.
That's neat. Yeah. Yeah. I think, maybe we'll end off with this and that, think about it this way. Your computer, you use, well, possibly if you're like us, you use your computer every single day. It is going to wear out. It's going to age out. And also what you have on it should be important enough to you that you have a plan for how to transition that information to the next level, right? To keep up. So yeah, it just don't wait for it to break. Don't wait for it to slow down. Try and be proactive and look at the other parts of the chain too. It's not always the computer, it could be something else. So if you guys have extra questions on this, please reach out to Jesse or Catherine on this. I'm sure they'd love to hear from you and even hear your comments on what you're doing right now with your computers and aging them out, sort of thing. So thank you guin for joining again today.
Thanks, Connie. Thanks, Catherine.